Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the latest release of Nintex Forms on-premise. There was a new build that came out on the 14th of May 2014. It's build 2.3.1.0 for the 2013 environment. Now it's added some new functionality or new features that are pretty cool actually. So we're going to go through a few of them and kind of give you a feel for what they're there for and how you can use them. The first one I want to talk about is the ability to now have a runtime function to query the user profile. So now you can actually pull information out from a particular user profile property based on the current user who's looking at the form, or even another user if you want to hard code their username and their domain/username. Now you see on the right here I've got my rules. I have a couple of rules here. The first one here is called a Stafford rule. So in this environment I'm actually logged in as a user called Eden Stafford, and what we're doing is we're going to check whether something called text last name is equal to some text called Stafford. Now what is the text last name? Text last name is actually a form variable, so this is something that will get evaluated just as the form is about to get rendered. So we'll jump into the forms variables. You can see there's my name, text last name. It's a string. I basically left all this as is, and down here there is a formula. Now for the formula, if you look in the Runtime Functions tab, this is where we have this new feature called User Profile Lookup. And when you click on it, it says looks the user profile data from SharePoint, and it takes a domain/login and the internal property name. So here's my function name. I'm using current user, and current user is a common property right there. And then I want to pull out, or the property I want to pull out is the last name. Now, here's the thing when it comes to user profile properties. If you go into Central Admin and you go to the user profile service application, if you click on this Manage User Properties, you'll see all the properties that are available for your users. Here's the last name, and you see there's a space between last and name. Click on that and go to edit. You'll actually see up here, and it's disabled, but that is the internal name. And you can see there's no space, and that's what you need to use when you're calling this user profile lookup function. You need to use the internal name for the property, not the display name. So that's something to be aware of. So this will do a lookup, pull out the current user's last name, and then we're in our formatting rule. We're actually doing a check to see if that variable is equal to the word Stafford. And if it is, you can see down the bottom here we have a checkbox called hide. It will hide the appropriate control that we have added. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all the rules. I'm going to select this, and this is a repeating section, and you'll see that this is actually linked to this Stafford rule. So in effect, when this form runs, if the current user's last name is Stafford, it will hide this repeating section. So let's try that out and make sure that works. So you see you have title, my repeating section, and then I have some other things like attachment controls. Let's do a preview. And because I'm logged in as Eden Stafford, you can see I no longer see that repeating section. So that's good, that works. Now that's where you can use this formula, this user lookup runtime function. You can actually also use it down here. This is a calculated value control, and you can use the same syntax there as well. And again, you can give that a name, and you can use it throughout your form. The cool thing about using Nintex Forms variables is that you don't have to have this calculated value controls all over your form. You can just simply reference the variables in your other formulas or other rules. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out, is this user profile property, because that's a big one, and you can get a lot of information out of it and really make your form very dynamic. The next thing I want to show you is something we've added for validation rules. So whereas before you just had the normal formatting rules where you can hide, disable, format text, things like that, now we have a rule type where you can actually specify what you want to do. You can actually do a validation rule. Now we've had validation rules or validation in Nintex Forms So you can actually go into one of these controls, and you'll see there's a validation section right here. But the validation rules are going to make it that much easier, so you can build out some complex conditions that that will tell Nintex Forms that this particular validation has succeeded or failed, and will allow a user to actually save or submit a form or not. In this case, what I actually have, if I open up this conditional formula builder, is you'll see I have an AND rule, and inside that I have two conditions. If the title is equal to Eden, so if the user has typed in the title Eden, and if the variable text last name is equal to Stafford. So if both these evaluates are true, then this is now considered the validation has failed, and so I'll see this particular message on my form. Now let's try this out, and we'll make sure that that works. So again, I'm still logged in as Eden. If I type in Eden into here, click on yes, you'll see it gives me this warning saying you can't type Eden into the title field. And you can make this a little bit more elaborate and say you can't type Eden into this title field if your last name is Stafford. Right? So we're kind of discriminating against Eden here. So that's the second piece of, or the second new feature that has come into Nintex Forms. The next one I want to talk about is the ability to now have multiple attachment controls. If you look at my form here, I have an attachment control here. You can actually see it's an attachments control here, and I have another one. Now when you do put multiple attachment controls, you need to make sure that you open up one of them, and that is considered the default one. That's actually a requirement. So you need to have at least one default attachment control if you're going to have attachment controls on your form. Now when you look at previewing this form, you can now have multiple areas where you can attach documents. So this will really help when it comes to doing something special in regards to building a form where you need to have different areas have different attachment files. That way it makes it easier for you to come back later and see, if you're doing some sort of maybe a medical form or some sort of legal form where people are attaching documents, different areas of that form will require different attachments. So you can actually format it nicely in such a way that you can have all your attachments for this section in here and all your attachments for another section in there. It makes for a better user experience and also makes it easier for you to group the attachments in the way they're meant to be grouped to make it easier for you. So that's the three main new features that have come out with Nintex Forms. The one thing to note is the release that came out on the 14th of May was for the English version of Nintex Forms, so just be aware of that. The other thing I want to mention is there are other features that came out, like enhancements and things like that. If you want to know more about that, visit the Nintex Connect site. Under connect.nintex.com, there's a download section. Expand the Nintex Forms section, go to downloads, and then you'll see there'll be a version history link for this particular download. You'll be able to get all the information you want in regards to what we released for that version. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to either post a message or shoot me an email, or if you have some really cool functionality that you've actually built out with these new features, I'd be really interested in seeing that as well. So thanks for listening in.